Hey folks, MasakoX here, and I can assure you, this chapter of the Dragon Ball Super manga is actually worth your time, because it actually addresses things that we actually kind of wanted, what with the addition of Trunks and Goten and their Saiyaman X1 and 2 powers. Now, if you've not been catching up with the manga, I don't blame you. It's basically been covering the Dragon Ball Super superhero movie. And if you want to actually understand, 90% of what's going on in the story, you can go and watch the 2-hour movie and you'll be pretty much clued up for the next, 2 or 3 months or something like that, because I think that's how long it's going to take before we actually get to the end of it. But if you really want to know, chapter 96, that had the introduction of Cell Max and some really cool manga panels which showed that Toyotaro, he actually does care in a way, and that he is quite good at drawing things when he actually puts his mind to it. But when it comes to chapter 97, being titled Rampaging Cell Max, which is very descriptive in the Japanese way, which we're all accustomed to, but also is kind of accurate, we actually see some really cool additions, because the basic plot covers the moment when we actually start to see Goten and Trunks do their thing. We then have Gotenks coming in, but it's not the Gotenks that we really wanted. We get Fat Gotenks, and I think in this version, he does even less, because at least in the movie, Fat Gotenks actually does something useful and manages to actually get some kind of damage on Cell Max. I don't know whether they're going to be including it in the next chapter, but based on where we're going to be going with this, I highly doubt it. But yeah, that's one downgrade. Another possible downgrade could be the fact that Krillin does even less. Now, as I talked about in my now privated video about the rant between 18 and Krillin and why I think their marriage and their perception within the Dragon Ball media had been tarnished, this was all something to do explaining why Android 18 was there. And it was mainly down to the fact that she was there to make sure that Krillin wasn't cheating. Now, of course, there was a mistranslation error, and it was mainly being less acerbic than it is in the actual Viz translation. And in the original Japanese translation, it's less mean, but the basic meaning is still the same. But I felt like I needed to take down that video just to kind of provide some context. I might put it back up again with some edits just to kind of make things a little clearer, but I think most of the points still stand. Do like this video if you actually want to see that, and if we get to over 1,500 likes, I'll reinstate it with a couple of edits here or there. But when it actually comes to the really good things that we actually saw, it's things that we really wanted to see. And it was all to do with the Saiyaman X thing. Goten and Trunks becoming the descendants of the great Saiyaman. What was the point of that? Well, it was more than just giving Goten and Trunks more to do. It's sort of actually to do with the plot point and what we get with some really cool callbacks to earlier on in the manga arc, where Goten and Trunks are fighting the monster of the day, produced by Dr. Hedo, and coming up with this really cool Super Saiyan flashy technique that would really look good for a Saturday morning cartoon, and lo and behold, the Gammas actually find out they are somewhat inspired by Saiyaman X1 and X2. Goten and Trunks are their progenitors almost, and that was really cool to see. And not only did we get some moment where they were actually fanboying over them, we saw Gamma 1 and 2 working together with them in a really coherent manner, which provided a really good way of sort of disabling Cell Max, albeit for a moment. And in a way, yes, it sort of makes Cell Max less intimidating because he can be subdued partially due to Goten and Trunks working together with the Gammas, but thematically, it works. We now see why the Saiyaman X plot was there, to then give us this moment with the Gammas. We all predicted that this would happen after we saw chapters 90 and 91 when Dr. Hedo was just going like, yes, this cape, I'm going to make superheroes of my own. I mean, we knew it was going to happen about 6 months ago, but it's nice to see it actually down on paper because a lot of predictions and hopes that we had for the manga have sadly been whittled away and we really didn't get any of that, so that was a little bit of a buzzkill. But this thing, we actually got to see. And this choreography that Toyotaro actually provided to us was really good and showed us that we didn't have to have just Gohan and Piccolo doing stuff. The rest of the team actually did things, because I remember in the movie, Goten and Trunks were just there to provide help in their normal civilian clothes and didn't really contribute much other than just doing Fat Gotenks just for the sake of fan service for a bit in the movie. And then they did manage to get a whack on Cell Max's head that did provide some kind of injury. But at the moment, it's not really been seen, because I think their contribution had been shifted to this four-way attack on Cell Max with Gammas 1 and 2. And that moment when it clicked between Gammas 1 and 2, it was so wholesome. It was really great to see these two being relatively human and actually having a proper conversation, because we sort of got that banter amongst the Red Ribbon Army lot and a little bit towards the end of the movie. But this was just another addition which I found really, really heartening, just to provide some more relatability to them and sort of making it a little bit more inevitable when we actually saw at the end of the chapter, Gamma 2 about to make his sacrifice, saying, you know what, number one, you're the more observant one. You're going to be the more useful one going forward. I think I'm expendable, but I can provide my own way of saving the day. So this actually makes Gamma 2 cooler. We all thought that Gamma 2 in the superhero movie was the superhero that the movie was titled on. And then we actually saw some other examples about what it could be, like we saw Dr. Hedo. Was he the superhero? No. Gamma 2, without a doubt, in that movie, was the MVP. And despite the fact that we barely got to see Gamma 2, and we sort of saw him as the, cheeky, bantery one, yet Gamma 1 is a serious, stoic type, we all missed him. We all felt really sorry for him, even though he is basically just an Android 16 facsimile to try and get Gohan to go Ultimate or Beast or whatever we want to call him. Just a bigger, grayer Super Saiyan 2 variant that we're having for this particular outing. But I felt that this actually improved the chapter. This was fun. It was actually an entertaining chapter with some really cool contributions. And it kind of just made Bulma's decision to ground them all the more strange, because they spent 6 months grounded, not doing anything other than going to school, no training whatsoever, and then Bulma, kind of like what they did with Android 16 and removing the explosive device, sort of made things a little bit harder for the Dragon team. So you can actually see that parallel as well, where Bulma's like, I think I might have done something to make it a little harder for folks, because what would have happened if Goten and Trunks had that 6 months training? I think they might actually been able to do some more damage. But then that begs the question, for the sake of this particular visual, of the Gammas and the Saiyamen working together, does this mean that Goten and Trunks are just as strong as the Gammas? Or were they just working together in sync because it looks cool and it makes a lot of sense? Because I think that realistically, the Gammas were probably contributing way more than we actually expected. But I think it's suffice to say that Cell Max here still looks good. Cell Max still looks really good in terms of what we actually saw in the manga, and you feel that Toyotaro is really enjoying himself with this particular section. I could tell that earlier on in the manga arc that he wasn't really caring about it. It sort of felt phoned in, especially the earlier chapters like chapter 91, chapter 92, basically anything that had to do with Krillin. The only good thing that we saw was that Marin was aged up. We finally got to see that after years of Marin being a toddler, even though they're 7 years old. And I don't know whether that's a Krillin thing or genetic thing or what have you, but we all know that Toyotaro really does not like Krillin. And we really feel that because of the fact that Krillin doesn't even get that moment with the Destructo disc, just to be able to ping it off and just being able to figure out various ways of them actually being able to contribute. It just felt off in a way. They just found out, apparently via the Gammas, that, attack the head, it's the weakest point. Now, how do they know that? Was it something that they have themselves? Is it just something that Dr. Hedo programmed into them as some sort of fail-safe device that, just in case Cell Max malfunctions or goes against his programming, this is what you gotta do, Gammas, to try and figure it out? But either way, I felt that this was actually a pretty solid chapter in the sense that it gave Goten and Trunks more to do that was actually relevant to what they've been going through throughout the entire manga arc, providing us this really cool crossover technique with the Gammas, instead of them just being there for a few moments, transforming into Gotenks, the fat one, and then getting an accidental hit on them whilst trying to be funny. We still got that comedic moment, which is still not funny after many, many years. It was funny the first time, maybe the second time with Fat Viku in the Fusion Reborn movie, but after that it's just like, yeah, we get it, okay. Maybe we could have just had another interpretation of a botched fusion, maybe like some other variation where they're really tall and gangly, or really, really small. That would have been really funny. Just finding out other ways where the fusion could have actually gone wrong, that would have also been really funny. And that despite that disadvantage, these two are so prodigious and so enthusiastic that they'd be able to style them out no matter what you did. But I feel like this chapter was pretty solid. I had a lot of fun with it, considering the fact that it is just a rehash of a movie that we saw last year. I think this is about as much fun as we can possibly get. I bet that chapter 98 is going to be quite emotional, and it'll probably see the introduction of Gohan Beast in the main manga format. And I bet that Toyotaro is going to have fun with it, because he is very much a Gohan fan. Having that visual of Orange Piccolo and Gohan Beast together, you definitely can tell that he's really looking forward to it so much. But I felt that this was a decent production for what we might expect. And of course, there are rumors going about that next month there is going to be some sort of big panel at New York Comic Con, but the rumors are now concerning about whether it might have something to do with some animated feature from Dragon Ball. We're all talking about, especially Have and I, that maybe they might be planning something for chapter 100 of the manga to try and bring it in sync with the anime. Maybe they might be going past Z for the first time. Comment down below what you think, what it could be, this particular panel. But we're thinking that it might actually be something, because we now have seen on Twitter that Toei is actually buying ads for their own Twitter channel, as in they're promoting their own feed to try and get people ready. And this was something that Bandai wasn't doing. This is Toei specifically. Now, I'm not saying that anything could happen, but this is different to what we've seen before. A lot of conjecture we had there, but now this is actually starting to look a little bit more realistic that Toei is doing something. Now, I think it's quite safe to say that 2023 was the year of One Piece. We had Gear 5 being introduced, and I might actually do a series on this channel about me watching all of One Piece. Let me know in the comments whether you actually like to see that, where I go through it 5 episodes by 5 episodes. But now next year, the 40th anniversary of Dragon Ball, when the manga was first introduced in 1984, this might be the year of Dragon Ball. Whether it's the web anime, whether it's something else, whether we're going to be getting a new movie, Toei is clearly putting up the money to do something. And maybe this is why we've been getting the superhero manga recap. Instead of working on brand new original things, they got a big enough buffer with the Moro arc and the Granola arc just to make sure that everybody is up to speed. It's still not a very smart thing to do, considering that manga sales are really bad right now, and that Dragon Ball Super is way down there in comparison to all the other Shonen Jump series out there. But maybe they might be just thinking, oh, we'll just take this hit for now, and then we'll go from there. And I know I'm not talking about the Super Manga Chapter right now, but I think this might actually be an explanation, and might be some hope, perhaps. But I'm really, really trying to keep it measured. I don't want to be burnt again, and neither do you. So, until then, be sure to subscribe for any more updates, and I'll see you again next month for Chapter 98, and we'll also know what the future of Dragon Ball Super, or whatever it's going to be called, is going to be.